I hope the word invitation finds its way. I hope that capitalism will evolve for everyone and the way our work operates and the way we hope to make a living. Making surprising work always. Not knowing until you know.
Welcome, friends. I'm Kristen Marting, and this is Torches. Today we have my sister-in-arms and poker pal, Melanie Joseph. Melanie is an award-winning theater maker and founded and led the Foundry Theater for 25 years. I am very excited to speak with her today. Welcome, Mel.
Hello, my sister.
So how did you come to be in downtown performance?
Well, I started uptown. I came to New York, and whoever I knew and whatever things, I'd studied with Uta Hagen in a year earlier as an actor. And so I came back and everything was about uptown in a certain way. And so I ended up working at the Women's Project. I worked at Ensemble Theater. I was all midtown. And I didn't know what was going on downtown when I first came. It was 83 and 84. I had no idea what was going on down here. And I was waitressing when my friend Coco said, "You have to come down and see the Wooster Group." So I'd never heard of the Wooster Group. The most downtown spirit I ever had was Sam Shepard in Toronto, right? I had no idea that I was going to get to see Sam Shepard in New York. That's a whole nother story.
Fool for Love?
That was later.
Oh, okay.
No, the earlier stuff. And so I came down. My friend Coco said, "You have to come and see the Wooster Group." Everyone was in it. Ron and Spalding, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe this was theater. I didn't know. And I just thought, what have I been doing all my life? And the other thing is that everybody uptown at that time, everyone was different than my spirit. Like, I couldn't use the word capitalism. No, everybody was kind of uncomfortable with me, with my, I guess, my socialism, which came from Toronto.
Right.
So I had to be quiet about that stuff, or I wasn't fitting into the gatherings of a lot more famous people than I ever ended up with. Yeah, a lot more. And so then I went to PS 122, and that was also when I moved to the East Village. Like, I just found myself at home, or I was becoming at home when I got rid of Midtown.
You once said, "I don't believe theater can change the world, people can." How did that idea inform the way you designed the conversations and events that you made at the Foundry?
There was a time in between discovering downtown and starting the Foundry where I was trying to leave theater, as you know, and then I couldn't. And then thanks to Cornel West, when I was having a nervous breakdown, I was able to start the Foundry. That's another story. That said, one of the things that I knew right away was that inviting my colleagues mostly from downtown to some of the more political gatherings of how does this work, or what could we do better, or this is what's actually happening in such and such a place, and some people are this hungry, and et cetera, et cetera. And so it didn't take long for me to realize how difficult it was to get people to come to those events that the Foundry was hosting. We always had great houses. People came to see our shows, always. And I was always so moved by how many artists always came to the Foundry show, but they did not come very often to the social justice organizations pieces, or even talking about hope at the Hope Conference in 95. That was 300 people. There were 300 people to that first big event.
I was there.
Yes, you were. That was when I met you. And and most of the people who came on the Friday night didn't come on Saturday. And that was the first time I realized, oh, okay, I'm going to have to figure out how to invite people differently. Because they're not coming because they don't like it, or because it's just not part of the gestalt of theater making. Or it wasn't then.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah. And you spoke about the invitation just now, and I know the invitation has always been really important to you, and you've always thought about how you invite an audience, whether that's an audience of artists or an audience of the general public, to work. Do you want to talk about why that is important?
There's a number of reasons to talk about the word invitation. There's not wanting to have to worry or not ever having to make money a key figure in what it was we did at the Foundry Theater, period. So inviting people, we always kept the cost low. And that was part of the intention of the Foundry Theater. But it was also because the gestalt, if you will, of gathering people wasn't happening easily. And I think that has a lot to do with succeeding in their theaters and doing things that were not the things that I started the company to do. So invitation still to this day means everything to me. It means the desire of seeing people, like gathering people, or having 5 people, or having 500 people. Like just gathering people and having things to talk about together, or change together, or etc. But it's the same thing with inviting them to come see a show, because we never knew we had such odd shows all the time, and odd in the best possible way. And so how you invited people to that was also a big deal. Like in the beginning of the Foundry, our invitations were fantastic because they were by the mail.
Right.
And so we could send all these different beginnings of the plays, or whatever you called them.
You were thinking that the experience was starting from the thing that
From
they
the
received
invitation.
in the mail. Yes,
yeah, it was
exactly.
our invitation. Yeah. And that was fantastic. We did that for a number of years before the computers took over, and my people I was working with said, Mel, come on.
Right. I remember getting a matchbook as an invitation to one show.
Yep.
I remember, and I think that was the
very first show. The Convention of Cartography, David Hancock's piece, was the first piece we did, which I actually had done earlier, but now I had a company. Also, we did, for Rindy Eckert's piece, we did a broken cassette tape.
I remember you got it in a plastic bag.
Yes,
that was so beautiful.
Wasn't it? It
Yes.
was so good. So we had a lot of joy making the invitations to the shows, making the invitations to the political activities. And I don't even want to say political activities. I don't know what to call it, but gathering people to look at the world differently. Okay. So yeah, so invitations still, and we never used marketing. Never. We never used, anybody who used the word marketing at the Foundry Theater had to leave. Because we did not want to market. We wanted to invite. And so, and to this day, I can't stand the idea of marketing everything. Yeah, so invitation had a lot to do with not marketing, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk about why you founded the Foundry?
Well, as I think you know, I was trying for a while to leave the theater at that time. I was running a small theater with 2 colleagues of mine, Suzanne Brinkley and Beth Schachter, and I was going to school to become a doctor. I had been going back and forth at that time, or through those years, to Uganda, and was making theater with my then very close friend, Alex Mukulu. And I thought, okay, I'm going to move here, but I want to be useful. And most of the artists, there were 400 theater companies at that time, and a huge theater that everybody could use. So I loved it there, and I thought, okay, but everybody had another job, which I also really thought was fantastic because they figured out how to take care of their families and show up for the theater.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was great. So I thought, okay, maybe that's how I can be useful and make theater. And so that went on in my about 3 years at Hunter. And when it came to writing my MCATs, I kind of had a breakdown because I realized that I would no longer be running Alice's Fourth Floor, which I was doing and having fun with, that I wouldn't really have time to even go to the theater. And it was suddenly attacking me. And even thinking about, I was even past thinking about whether I was going to do this in Kenya or not, or in Uganda, because I was going to be here for years anyway, before I would ever move there. So I kind of had a breakdown. And I didn't write my MCAT the first time. I just couldn't do anything. And I heard Cornell speak at something. It was the first time. And
Cornell West?
Yes, Cornell West. And I thought, I have to talk to Cornell West. This is the only way I'm going to understand whether making theater is important enough or whether med school is important enough, or like, how do I measure these things? And well, as you know, I faked my way into meeting him in Princeton.
You pretended to be a student,
I
as I
did.
recall.
Yes, I did. But I was definitely too old to have been a student by then, until he finally said, "Sister Melanie, which class of mine are you in?" I said, "Oh my God, Cornell, I'm having a nervous breakdown and I need to talk to you." So I went back to see him a number of times, and he knew theater better than anyone I knew. He could just quote anyone, and especially the Russians. He could just say, from one play to the next, he could just jump into and be doing whoever. And so finally I said this would be the kind of theater. I wrote a mission statement after, I guess, 4 or 5 visits with Cornell. I wrote a mission statement, and I went into his room and I read it to him, and he said, "Let's do it."
And he was your first board member.
Yeah, but I never thought he would say, "Let's do it." So, yeah, he was my very first board member.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, and then the Foundry started.
And could you say in brief, like in one sentence, like what was the mission of the Foundry?
It's still on the website. It's never changed. Every year we sat down with the mission to see how it needed to be changed, and no one would change it ever. So it's exactly what it was in 1993.
I love that.
I do too.
That's clarity of purpose.
Yeah, and nobody ever wanted to change it, which surprised me. Yeah.
You've always been suspicious or contemplative or questioning of the nonprofit industrial complex. What did it mean to you to choose to build an artist-centered, non-hierarchical organism rather than an institution?
I'm not sure if everybody who worked there would have said we were non-hierarchical, even though at times we were and times we weren't, I think. But the idea of changing the structure of an institution was something that everyone who worked there actually wanted to understand and wanted to know what was possible and what else was possible and what else. And I mean, the marketing is one thing, not having marketing be one of the things that we're doing. Everybody had to learn how to make a budget. Everyone who worked there, didn't matter. They had to learn how to make a budget and were asked questions, etc. We were very naked about money everywhere.
I remember you always printed the budget in the program so the audience could see exactly what everyone was paid and what things cost.
Yeah. And so money was part of our work, as we understood it, which was different from what we needed and how were we going to do X, Y, and Z. We never owed anyone $1 in 25 years. I still can't believe that. As I've said
Incredible.
a million times, I would walk through New York with a sandwich board saying, we never owed anyone any money. I was so proud that, so in terms of like, that was also part of what was different about our structure.
Right.
Everybody had to be able to write a budget. People had to do everything.
Right.
Yeah.
How did you, so you advocated for budget transparency and for equity and pay between artists and staff long before other people in the field were thinking about that?
Yeah, we didn't have anyone to talk to. That was the other thing. Like so many of the younger people who came to work with me, they would say all the time, we don't have anyone to talk to about what we're trying here. You know? And it was really so.
Right.
Because everybody's theater worked in a different way from us.
How did it affect your decision making and producing?
What, our being different?
The non-hierarchical, the budget transparency, how did that feed into your art making? Or did it? Maybe it didn't.
It didn't. We made producing and art making anyway. You know, and other kinds of events as well. So it never changed from day one, from getting to do David Hancock's first piece, and not allowing the press to come when they actually wanted to come, because it wasn't supposed to be known as a piece of theater. It was supposed to be visited. So right away we were making work differently, you know, and sometimes we let the press in, sometimes we didn't. It depended on what the material was and what people wanted.
How did you define success in an organism that was devoted to risk-taking and experimentation?
Well, risk-taking came with the property from day one, as I said.
The property being the
foundry,
art?
the foundry, the art, the politics, the everything. We were never not doing that. So it wasn't something that we were worried about in normal ways. I'm sure that many people who worked with me would say, that's BS. It was terrifying to do X, Y, or Z. It wasn't for me. And it wasn't for the people who, some of the people who were the closest to me, particularly when we started shared leadership. But so it wasn't ever that. Taking risks was normal. You know, like what? Of course we were going to take a risk. Who knew what was going to happen? Who knew what a piece was going to become? And who was going to be invited and where it was going to be and how it operated as a theater piece, and was it a theater piece? Or was it, you know, and how was the invitation? How was the evolution of the invitation? And we fought hard because, you know, there were, once the computer started, everything started to change in terms of the kind of invitations we were making. That was really tough for us.
In this world, it isn't enough to be capable. You've got to have luck and a fortune in place before you can establish yourself as a prosperous man and set yourself up a retirement plan.
And when you say once the computer started, you're talking about the transition to digital media and social media and everything being on email instead of physical mail and thinking differently.
Yeah, and it was so fast.
Right, it was.
It was just like, you know, it was, wow. It was when you realized that time was changing also, that the velocity of time was completely changed in a minute. Yeah.
So, you know, your work was very centered in experimental practice. How do you think that institutions could better honor experimental practice, resisting commodification?
It's so much more fun. I can't believe that people don't know that. And I
Uh-huh.
think it has something to do with the structure of those institutions and the fear of letting go. We never, to the day we closed, we never really had anyone to talk to, not in a regular way. Some of the people who worked with me would go to other places where other things were happening and come back and go, Mel, you know, and the same thing with going to the World Social Forum. We took 25 artists to the World Social Forum and thought that would just flip open everybody. No, it didn't. It flipped open 4 people, you know what I mean? So I think that I gave up on, not this way, but I just thought, I'm just going to keep going in the way I understand it, or in the way we hope that it will evolve. And also Ruth Malichik was a big help to me, especially in those first 10 years. Holy smokes. She just said, don't stop, you know. And she also, you know, when I said to her I was writing grants and I was being really, like, I closed all my grants with, you'd be lucky to give us your money. And I told that to her after about 2 years, and she said, absolutely. So she was the one person that from time to time we would smoke cigarettes together, and she'd say, of course you can do that. You can do it this way and that way. And I'm like, okay. So we just kept going, honey. You know, like, we just kept going and trying to even know what we were doing.
Yeah. I want to hop back to the World Social Forum for a minute. And, you know, I feel like that was this effort to connect, and this was so much of the Foundry's work, was to try to connect artists to activists and to have a greater fusion between their work together.
And they weren't all activists. They were people who were making things in
Yes.
different ways. And
Where do you see art's potential to drive social or cultural change?
it's a big question, honey, because, you know, at the Foundry it was about how am I inviting people to meet other people? How am I inviting people to look at the theater? Because the people in the social justice world didn't know nothing from theater. So
Right.
getting them to come and see plays was just as hard as getting artists to come and see, you know what I mean? So, and that was certainly the case at the World Social Forum. I don't know how to answer that, because I think, especially right now, in the last few years of our fabulous United States. But it's also why I'm so interested in what someone like Milo Rao is doing. And that gives me hope like crazy.
Yeah.
So somebody who's actually bringing those things together and inviting the whole of Europe
Into the conversation.
into the conversation and
Right.
never stopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is spectacular. And that is, yeah, I feel a relief.
How do you hold that tension between artist expression and artist activism?
I can't hold that. I don't hold that tension. I can't. People have to want to do what they want to do, you know, and I remember in 2020, we just had a little spate of time after the first COVID, and then we had the spring, and it was right after the death of George Floyd.
Right? Yeah.
And all of the theaters in the country, nobody was able to run theaters, and the whiteness of those theaters was kind of shocked by that death. Anyway, there were people that came to visit me in that springtime. I think I've told you this, who actually, I'm not going to say who they are, who actually came and said, Mel, I finally understand why you were constantly inviting me. Because they were marching. And they were like, oh my God. And I'm like, yes, oh my God, yes, and I needed you so many times. There were some gifts at that time from colleagues of mine who have become much more active in their relationship to non-theater. I don't know if we know how to understand the relationship between these things, because the theater is not everybody's dying to go, especially in America, right? And so it's not like all the people who are doing amazing work are coming to the theater. They're not.
Yeah.
They are in Russia, but they aren't here. And so it's a very strange relationship with each other. But I think more and more people in the theaters right now, some of the theaters, are really trying to understand, or I won't say to understand, to bring those things together in some way. Let's see. Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Okay.
You said a number of years ago, if we don't build agency in our own field, we have even less capacity to consider how we can participate as part of citizenry. Do you still agree with that right now?
Wow. Yes, I do, but I can't remember saying it. Do you?
Well, I found it in some research.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, no, I haven't changed my opinion about that at all. I mean, Kristen, one of the things that I think is important to say in this meeting is that all of these questions, any of these questions, are still really alive. And I feel, well, my respect for you is enormous. But I feel this will never stop in our lifetimes.
No, it won't.
And it's especially hard getting older and wanting to see change and not being able to see it and not being even able to understand how to place myself. And so I'm not sure. I wasn't sure ever.
Right.
Even running the Foundry, I was never sure how to place myself so that people would actually go, oh, like, what was the invitation? What was the invitation in me? Not just that I was able to, I would write and write and write to artists, try to think, no, don't write it this way, write it this way. But it was in me. And I would say that the thing that comes to me the most in this conversation is all the things that I didn't finish, and that I didn't finish intellectually, I didn't finish creatively. Not like, oh, boo-hoo, I didn't.
Right.
But as of now, I haven't.
So it feels to me like that's an open door and an invitation for other people to continue what you started.
Oh, definitely.
Is it, when you think about your legacy, the legacy that your work leaves behind, what do you think, where do you place it? What do you think it leaves for audiences or for artists?
I hope the word invitation finds its way. I hope that our relationship as makers, particularly, I'll say, theater makers or artists of some kind, I hope that capitalism will evolve for them, for everyone, and the way our work operates, and the way we hope to make a living. And so I hope for that as the future, as some forms of future. Making surprising work always, not knowing until you know, and knowing that, and however much it costs is what it costs, so we got to find that. So you don't need a season, you just don't. You need to make art, and you need to introduce people who are changing the world.
I've been thinking about pictures. I've been thinking about pictures and how one might make pictures on the stage. Which is not to say that I've been thinking about stage pictures. On the contrary.
I don't know, honey. I think it's already happening in small little places here and there. Whether they were with the Foundry or not, whether it has anything to do with my legacy, it has to do with the legacy of reality, which is growing for some people.
Yes.
And so I
Yes.
can just go, hallelujah,
Yes.
and thank people. I feel thankful to some people for the work that they're doing.
I want to hop back. You talked about being older now and looking back. How do you work against our culture's celebration of the young over the seasoned?
Oh, I just refuse. I just turned 70. Everyone, I just turned 70 years old on November 26th. What? What? So I think that everyone should invite me for tea. It was a while when we Sunset the Foundry. It was such a cockeyed time anyway, but at the same time there was the cockeyedness of being an elder, which I didn't really think I was, but I was. Not running the Foundry as that elder with other people. Wondering then what the invitation from and to me might be, given that I'm in a different age. I didn't want to think about being in a different age, but guess what? I am, because that's what is structured. It is. It's, I do think that there are some people who, well, certainly it depends. It depends on so many things. It depends on the culture you grew up in. It depends on so many different things. But I would say that in the theater right now, there's just the beginnings of thinking about who the elders are. There was just at Ping Chong's company, they just had an event looking at Ping's work, and that just made me so happy. Right. Because he made that place. He made everything that he made. Do you know? Yeah. So it thrilled me that Mayan To, yes, is her name, that she wanted to do that going forward with the company. That was thrilling to me. I think that little by little there is a bit more of that happening once people know how that's useful to them, how that's interesting to them, how that's, how that matters.
Yeah. Do you think that the spirit of downtown still exists?
Well, it hasn't really existed in a long time, has it? I think the spirit of downtown, well, when you say the spirit, it's a really good question, honey. I think that Midtown came to downtown in the 1990s, for sure. And I'm even looking at the Worcesters, for example. There just was an increase in the appetite for money.
So when you say Midtown came to downtown, it's about finance? It's about the way money...
It's that, it's money, it's boards, it's the structure of the
institutionalization.
Well, the non-stop institutional,
right. Yeah,
and how we get our money and how, and the kind of ass-kissing that is no longer ass-kissing because now it's sexy. Do you know what I mean? And plus, the other thing that was really interesting to me was that in the so we started the Foundry in 94, and by the time we were in 2000, or just thereafter, there were a handful of theaters in downtown that were starting. And many of them had a lot of money to make their companies with. Not a lot, but certainly more than we ever thought. Do you know what I mean? And they all came from really good schools, and they all came, so that was also happening. And that it took me a while to go, oh, okay, this is what's downtown now. Not damn it, but reality. So there just were a lot of ways into being downtown that started changing, especially with technology, and the rapidity of it, which nobody had a chance to even consider.
Right.
Do you know? I mean, I think there is a spirit in artists downtown. I don't think downtown itself is any different than anywhere else.
What would a truly sustainable artistic life look like?
Oh my God, Kristen. Really? Why don't you answer that question? The capacity of sharing. Not only the capacity of sharing, but the fun, the fighting, the thrill, the mess, but the commitment to sharing, which means also sharing how their company operates, sharing how people are invited, sharing how artists feel safe, sharing how invitations to people outside of the theater are so valuable, could be so valuable, since they never come to the theater, so why not invite them? You know, being able, I think, to really start to evolve the idea of shared leadership, because it doesn't happen in a minute. It's a long process of understanding. And it's a long process of understanding also because what's the turnover? And then does it have to start all over again? And like, what are the ways we can share the theater that we make? And that, I'd like to live long enough to have more of those conversations, to be honest. Yeah.
Could you share a moment of pure joy in one of your works?
One moment
Yes.
of pure joy? Yes. In Casey Llewellyn's show, which was loosely based on our town, she had this group of actors seated, and they were the dead people. It was in the cemetery, and they sang. What that song was like this. It was like the early '80s of downtown, of anywhere downtown, of with just you had to dance. You know what I mean? Let's dance the last dance tonight. This was what my young life was, right here. This was it. And all of these people that died of AIDS, that died of, and that lived
Yeah.
through this.
That survived.
Yes, it was just so huge every single night to see that and to watch it on the actors who you could feel them holding it. Oh my God, that was one of my favorite things. I mean, I had so many favorite things. I can't believe you only asked me for one. Okay.
And that one was it here. So
Yes,
that's
it
a
was.
nice- That's
Oh
a
my
nice
God.
one that you chose to share.
That's correct.
Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to get to say?
Okay, I have to fit another joy in.
Okay.
Okay. So it's our second show, Deviant Craft. We were doing it in the Brooklyn Bridge, Anchorage, when artists still could use that. I had a cast of 8 amazing creatures, one of whom was Lee Nagrin.
Oh, a legend.
Yes. And she played a character that was both alive and dead. Okay? That was the character. It was a character that was alive, and also it was a ghost. It was the same thing through the whole show. And we were, in those huge, fabulous, oh my God. And so we had built a theater. Oh, and we were using the whole place for for rehearsal. We rehearsed for almost 3 months. It was amazing. So we had built this whole kind of Shakespearean theater in one of the rooms, or whatever you call them. And then we had this huge staircase going up to where the second balcony was for the audience. So Lee had this beautiful monologue that was going up the stairs before all the audience went into the proper theater. And we were rehearsing, and we'd been rehearsing for a while, and she was going up the stairs, and I suddenly said, Lee, just stop for a minute. Are we like asking you to do this too many times, because she was an elder,
Yeah.
you know. And she looked down at me from the top of the stairs and she said, Melanie, I'm an actor. And the whole room just fell apart. No, I'm fine. Oh my God. And everybody, we said it all the time. For months, we talked about that moment. So that was just sheer joy of being told off.
Right.
Yeah, that was a great woman. So many people who were so important to me. Some who are gone. Yeah, I like to think about, I wish we could light a candle for the people who were part of changing our own lives, or our best selves, or worse selves.
We can do that. I have candles.
Yeah, let's light a candle, and let's call names out.
Mine are there. Let me come over here. Here, I'll hold the candle and you light it.
You got it. The Gotham Coffee Roasters. I love them. They give me joy. Well, for the people in the theater who changed our lives, or who loved us, or who were furious with us, I guess these are all ands, and who taught us amazing things that we didn't know, and that maybe the theater wouldn't have been itself without some of those people. If I start making names, we could go all day.
Yeah. We're holding them in our heads.
We're holding them in our you-know-what. I'm just so grateful to have known who I've known, and to have gotten the gifts from them that I got, and some of the shit from them that I got. And those who said to keep going. Yeah, Morgan Janessa's fault. I wouldn't have done the Foundry if it wasn't for her. Yeah.
Yeah.
To them all.
To them all. Great. That was gorgeous.